Welcome to another edition of the SafeRack Podcast. I'm Kenny Rogers, Vertical Market Specialist.
And I'm Ray Evans, Vertical Market Specialist for Bulk Chemical.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about Railcar BOLOs. A lot of customers call in and want to have, they have a lot of questions on, hey, I've got this Railcar application. What do I need to have safe access and loading at these locations? And a lot of times, what we'll see is that they don't know what they don't know.
Exactly. A lot of times I hear my rail cars are all the same. Well, we know they're not the same, right?
Right. There's no dedicated fleet. Well, I shouldn't say no, because there are some, but very rarely is there a dedicated fleet of rail cars for a particular application.
Exactly. Most people don't realize that liquid rail cars, they come in various lengths and sizes, and it all depends on the product or the commodity that you're transporting. And they come in different sizes as well. Some of your dedicated cars, like an ammonia car, that might be a smaller, a 45-footer that's maybe only 10,000 gallons. Conversely, all the way up to an LPG rail car, which are over 33,000 gallons in there. So wide variety. So
obviously different lengths, different heights, and different crash box designs for these various railcar applications.
Exactly. And like I said, it's really based on the commodity that you're transporting. Okay. Some cars are tight fill and some are splash loaded. So if you're going to be a tight fill, that's going to be typically a pressurized rail car. Mm-hmm. And a pressurized rail car, they're going to be transporting hazardous materials such as ammonium nitrate, might be chlorine, ethylene oxide, LPG, or maybe vinyl chloride. Mm-hmm. So they're all going to be insulated. They're going to be pressurized. And they can also be insulated or non-insulated, depending on what the product is as well.
So they're going to have safety valves, tight fill connections, whereas you could have these rail cars that have splash loaded, which you don't have the same needs or requirements for those applications.
Correct. They could be, a splash loading could be edible oils, it could be fuel oils, things of that nature. When we're dealing with a pressurized car, they're going to have they're not going to have a manway where you're going to splash load. They're just going to have like a bread basket where you make your connections in there. And typically you're going to see a smaller crash box, 6x6 crash box there versus non-pressurized. So non-pressurized, right, you could be doing, like I said, corn syrup or edible oils or other commodities. Then when we're dealing with a non-pressurized rail car, you're going to see a little bit longer crash box up there because you still have your manway and you have your bread basket. So these cars, you could be doing a tight fill or a splash fill.
Yeah, a lot of times with these types of rail cars, you'll see that they have the offsets, and there's some special design criteria that we like to design to that helps people safely access these rail cars. What are some of those? What are some of those different types of solutions that you're looking at out there?
Well, typically, what we want to try to do is have, with these offset crash boxes, we typically want to put in a wider gangway, if possible. In the old days, before they had safety cages, you would just have a little pivoting gangway that would pivot to the opening. But that's not the best approach, because as you can see in the slide behind us, the guy's going to have to hop over a handrail just to get access to the rail car. So is that really best practice?
Yeah, I mean, you're creating more of an unsafe condition by having to jump over that crash box versus just going up the side of the rail car.
Right, and then depending on the size of your safety cage, the bottom rail of that cage could interfere with their connections as well.
Right, you can't open the hatches, you can't make connections to the loading apparatus, whether it's a tight fill or splash fill. So it does create a host of issues if you don't have the right gangways in there.
So what we like to recommend is to provide a safer, more effective loading operation is to put in a wider gangway, right? From a 48 inch to a 5 foot all the way up to a 6 foot wide gangway we've done in the past.
Yeah, what it does is, obviously, whenever the rail car comes in, if it's offset left or right, it can come in either way, and then it can obviously solve that issue. But on another level, if it's a hazardous application and the people accessing the top of the rail car have on PPE, which is kind of bulky sometimes, goggles, you have a respirator,
right?
Yeah, you'll have your Tyvek suits or whatever on there. It makes it difficult if you have a smaller gangway to access this rail cars.
Exactly. So that's why I said a minimum 48 inch wide is what we're looking for. So with the two rail cage design, that's been industry standard for a long, long time. But now companies are being more proactive, and they want to close off that gap and reduce it to less than 19 inches. So we've got a couple solutions that are out there in the industry. We can have a four rail cage that articulates down with the gangway. Basically, it's like a two rail cage on steroids. And then what I mean by that is that we've got the two rail cage design, and then on the inboard and the outboard side, we've got these flappers that kind of fold down and close off the gaps on the inboard and the outboard side.
So whenever you're having one of these cages access to a safe access gangway, it works in an arc motion.
Correct.
Which is why you have to have that flapper on the outside versus a vertical motion for an elevating cage.
Correct, because on the crash boxes, in one particular plant, you might have a 6x6 or maybe all the way up to a 7x6. We need to make sure when that cage comes down that if you just come straight down, you can actually hit the outboard rail. So we have a folding that comes down, rests on top, and then folds down.
Sounds good. So what about retrofitting to some of the existing structures that are out there? A lot of times these are a little bit bigger. Are there any issues that you see whenever you're putting one of these gangways or elevating cages out there with some existing locations?
Yeah, one thing you need, it does take up a little more real estate on the face of the platform. So it could be anywhere from 6 to 7 feet depending on the size of the gangway. If you've got process pipe or nitrogen lines or whatever that you can't move, we do have another solution that's out there in the industry, and that's going to be a 4-rail elevating cage. It's a freestanding system. We're going to drop supports to grade, and you don't have to worry about what's on the face of your platform.
Yeah, because a lot of times if they have to relocate process piping, conduit, whatever it may be out there, that's an expensive proposition.
Absolutely.
It could be more than the cost of our equipment, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then with these elevating cages, we can power them with hydraulics, pneumatics, or electric, either non-explosion proof or explosion proof.
Good. So kind of a summary of today's discussion, we talked about the BOLOs that are out there. We get a lot of calls from customers, hey, we've got a pretty cluster, an application that's got a lot of congestion on the face of the platform or has a lot of obstructions, and our fleet of rail cars are, we just don't know, what we need to have for this application. The experience out there from some companies is indispensable. I mean, you can't go out there and feel comfortable not knowing some of the BOLOs that are out there and feel like you're going to put a product in that's going to be safe and going to work within the parameters of an existing application.
Absolutely. So with SafeRack, we've got a dedicated sales team. We can do as little or as much as you need us to do. Okay, we can do a turnkey if you just need a replacement gangway. That's up to you, but we do offer those services to make sure that you have a successful project.
Sounds good. Well, that's all the time we have for today's podcast. Join us next time when we discuss design build services.